Good morning, everyone. So I had this in the press overnight, and let's take a look. This side here looks nice and smooth. This sides look a bit rougher, I would say. Comparing the two, they both look nice and tight as far as this stable nature of the pulp here that you see. So all it was is pulp, and I don't add any really extra agents like methyl cellulose or something. You can if you want, but I don't typically add it. And in the past, what I've done is brush the area around the spot that I need to leaf cast with methyl cellulose and then apply the pulp, right? And that also works, right, in case you have weak hydrogen bonding between your pulp and the paper. But this seems like it's really nice and strong hydrogen bonding. Abaca, in my experience, provides the best hydrogen bonding between, look at that, right? Anyway, it provides really good hydrogen bonding between the paper and the pulp. And look at this, the lumpiness of, right, of the one without formation aid here. All the fibers clinged together, got stuck together, and you got thick areas and thin areas, and you could probably go over, if you don't have formation aid, you could probably go over these areas with you know, a brush and or tweezers or something, and then separate the fibers and put them in the right place. I do have thin areas here, as you can see, that didn't fill well, but it was a rush job, right? So this area here is much smoother, less of these little lumps, I would say. You can still see the fibers in some areas here. You can see the nature of the abaca, how the fibers are nice and long. So what I do with my fibers, as you saw, is use a blender. And if you have a Hollander beater, that would be the best approach to it, right? Or you can beat the pulp with a piece of wood, really, like you make the pulp and you put it in a plastic bag and you start beating on it, right? And that gives you a nice also, but it takes a long time to beat the pulp, so I don't bother. I just go ahead and use a blender for that purpose. And blender is perfectly okay, right? I mean, it's just as long as you don't blend it too much. I blend mine for 3 minutes or so, and I let it rest. I reblend it, right? So it's about 3 minutes all together in total. So what we did here is we added, let's look at it in the back, see how it looks like in the back. Again, you can see here how you have leaf casting that shows, and here nice and smooth, and really the area is thin. I mean, I probably should have applied more pulp, but it's really nice and tight, not gonna go anywhere. So the steps I used essentially are as follows. I took the abaca pulp, I cut them up into little squares, put them in warm water or hot water overnight, and then blended them in the blender for about 3 minutes. What comes out is a pulp that has clingy fibers to it. That's the nature of abaca, nature of cotton linters in general. If you're going to use cotton linters or abaca, that's what you're going to see. And you end up then adding the sizing or the coloration, color the pulp, add retention aid, add the sizing, and then at the end you add the formation aid to a batch that you're going to be using. I don't add the formation aid to the whole thing. I add it to a batch of the pulp, right, mix that I end up diluting in water quite a bit to get it into the right consistency, and then I add the formation aid to it. And typically the formation aid that you're going to be adding is very much made according to the recipe they tell you in the carriage house, which you have to do underwater with a constant stirring. It takes a while for it to be made. But once you get the mucilage, it's ready to go, and you have to make it fresh. It's like good for up to 8 hours usually. All right, so the order of adding the formation and functional aids. I do the ketone dimerizing first. Of course, I have the Abaca pulp here. So I do the ketone dimerizing, the alkyl ketene dimers, which I get also from the carriage house. Carriage house, if you get everything from the carriage house, that's your best bet. Get all your material from there, right? And then you add the pigment, and then you add retention aid, and then you add the formation aid. So polyethylene oxide is related to polyethylene glycol, which is Miralax, and I haven't used Miralax, but I would imagine Miralax might work also just as well as polyethylene oxide. But again, I did not try it, and it's up to you guys to try it if you want. Other additives I used are an antifungal. I add to my pulp, which is sodium propionate, and I add it at 0.4 to 0.5% concentration. 0.4 to 0.5% concentration. And occasionally I may add glycerin, very, very tiny amount, and that helps with the pliability of the pulp. So if your pulp is too thick sometimes, the pliability can suffer, and the glycerin helps with folding the pulp once it dries much better. So polyethylene oxides is what we use here for formation aid, not polyacrylamide, different type of chemical here. And if you don't have polyethylene oxides, you could use neri, which is really hard to find in this country, but you can get it at an industrial maybe plant that makes paper. Maybe they use neri in it. They use it in Japan, paper making, right? So neri, N-E-R-I, not to be confused with nori, which is the word for glue in Japanese. Nori is not the same as neri, right? Neri, N-E-R-I, is essentially formation aid. And if you don't find neri, then you can use okra slime, and there are videos on YouTube that show you how to make the okra slimes. Guar gum is also another product that can give you these slimes that act as formation aid, and you can use guar gum instead of okra slime or polyethylene oxide that I get from the carriage house. Anything else you want to add is up to you. These are functional aids. If you add them, it's just a matter of your own personal preference. And as far as the fiber type you want to use, I realize that the fiber I'm using here is much better than the fiber of the wood pulp in the book. So it doesn't really match as far as fiber type, but it is higher in cellulose, lower in lignin, and really will last longer, and the bonding is better. And this is no methyl cellulose, right? No methyl cellulose, and you have really pretty good bonding here between, right? It's not coming off. So, in my opinion, drying it slowly for a day, at least overnight, rolling it and drying it slowly, changing paper towels is really important. Stuff that, you know, you watch Jerry the Jitterbug doing it, right, on his channel. He's very meticulous in the way he does his pulp, and very meticulous in the way he applies it and then rolls it. And so he has a whole library of how to make the pulp and how to use it. And he just uses like plain pulp, right? He's really good at doing leaf casting, so you have to watch his channel at times. But you can, again, as I said, you can do different, you can try different methods as far as functional aids go. You could try different additives if you want, you know, like I do the sodium propionate and glycerin occasionally, right? So yeah, so I think it worked pretty well. I'm pretty happy with the results. I think this is the way to go with leaf casting. As far as applying this with a P1000, it's been working for me, but in the future I'm attempting to find a way of applying this even sheet in one swoop. How do I take a shape that is similar to this from the pulp and apply it directly to the area itself? So there is a method called couching they do in the paper industry, in the amateur paper industry, where if you're making your own paper, how do you do it? Well, you use a mold and a decal, essentially. You build the pulp and you get it into the mold, and then you couch it on a piece of fiber, a piece of cloth. And then you press it and you have the paper, essentially, right? Try it to press it, that's the piece of paper. Well, if we can get that pulp over this area from the couching, from the mold, and put it here in one swoop, then you have a consistent sheet that goes on and it can really hold. And I think that's stuff I'd like to try in the future and get that going. You can also use maybe a spatula, right? And take the pulp out and just put it on very thinly. If it's a small area, you could do that kind of work. But again, it's up to you how you're going to be doing it. Jerry uses, of course, a bottle to squeeze the pulp on. I have been using the P1000, which is really gives you very good control over the amount of pulp you're adding to different areas, although at times you get this sort of effect and you end up having to redo it, or right. But this sort of effect, you know, is just cosmetic in nature, because when I go like this, it is rough, but when I turn the lights out, you don't see it, right? Pretty consistent. A little bit darker because you have more pulp here that build up in layers, so you end up with a darker, even though the same amount of pulp was added as here, this area is darker because of the way the pulps sit on top of each other and they cling together, right? So this is thicker actually than this, and actually this probably will hold better than this, maybe, I don't know. Let's see. This is holding pretty well. This has a rip here, but I didn't fill it, so I don't want to be too aggressive with it, but it's holding pretty well too. So yeah. And you know, do your own thing and be prepared that you may have a failure occasionally. So try to practice on cheap books first. Get your you know, emulsion made, and you know, pulp emulsion made. Add what you want to add to it, and then go for it. Right? Just like be ready for everything. So don't just like rush into it. Right? Say to yourself, I need this, I need that, and then put everything together and then go for it. Right? So imagine if you're doing now the spine. If the spine is split and you need to do repair of the spine with pulp, and if you have every single wrap in the book has that issue, then it's going to add thickness to the paper, because you have to extend the pulp over, right? Show it to you on the other side. You have to extend the pulp over so it overlaps with the paper, and that's going to give you sheets that are thicker than before though. So if you do it right, you shouldn't add up to too much, but if you add too much pulp, it's going to be very thick. interior. And then the staples don't fit, right? And the book looks kind of awkward, right? It's going to have that build up to it. So what's the solution to this? To calculate the exact amount of pulp that goes here. So that's the focus of other videos I'm working on, is how much pulp do you need to apply to a particular area to get satisfactory results, right? All right, well, thank you for watching. I hope this series was helpful for you guys, and I hope that you try it out and let me know how it goes with the Formation 8, right? Did it help you with the pulp, dispensing the pulp, or was it a waste of time? Thank you for watching and have a great day.